about when you went to see the president, Lyndon Johnson, to talk to him about that.
Oh, well, that is...
Well, hey, how you doing? Back with another interview segment today with a lovely man who has the name of...
Jerome Lipani.
I gotta say, it's an honor to meet you. So I guess, well, quick question. Who are you?
Who am I?
Yes. What do you do?
I'm a long-term artist activist. I've been doing this since the late 60s. I have been filming Bread and Puppet plays, full-length plays. At this point, after 12 years, I've filmed about 111 of them. I do full-length productions, and I also do shorts. And I was a theater major, and I had very wonderful mentors who told me, educated me about what began to be happening in the theater in the Weimar period, which is the period in Germany before Hitler rose to power. And so that was in the 30s in Germany, and there were many innovative things that were happening in terms of the arts in relation to social issues. And so there were some famous directors like Piscator, who did things like have the actors on stage reading the newspaper, the daily newspaper, and acting out a scene from that. And so that was like a completely radical thing that was happening. And then there was Bertolt Brecht and his distancing technique, in which he wanted signs to be put up at the beginning of a scene, so in order to alienate, or to help to separate, rather, the audience members who were normally would get caught up in the magic of the theater and moving their consciousness into the consciousness of the production itself in a dreamlike way, in a way that was like a celebration of the unconscious itself, or that Jung talks about, and it was in order to break that emotional relationship that they might normally have with the characters that they were seeing on the stage, to have people concentrate on what the issues really were that were being discussed. And so Peter Schumann, who has directed Bread and Puppet since the mid-60s, since earlier than that, has followed through on that technique. And that's what I do also in relating the films to him and to his work. I often do that. I zero in on the message that's being really asked for here and expressed here. So over the last few years since the pandemic, there have been many exhibits that we have made, that I have made in collaboration with Alexis Smith, who takes the bed sheets that Peter has been painting, which were donated bed sheets. Often they are a double bed, or it could be a queen size bed, and he has created hundreds of these bed sheets. And then we have live interpretations of these bed sheets that occur in performance improvisatorially by actors of the company. So, yes, there have been many things, many plays that have been over the last few years that have been concentrating on the crisis in Gaza and in the Ukraine. Both of these wartime scenarios are something that is very, very, very deeply traumatizing and disturbing to Peter. It keeps him up at night. He can't sleep because of the horrors of the Gaza situation. And so I have a channel at Orca TV in Montpelier, which I've had since these 12 years, and where YouTubes go up. But here, with the incredible support of Megan and the rest of CCTV, we have been archiving my movies here in the MP4 form, that is the pre-form, before they get up, before they're uploaded to YouTube. And so there's 111. Well, no, I think there's actually 104 or so, because I have films that I need to add to this archive that I will be doing next week. I have additional movies here, as well as more than 50 movies on environmental movement events of agitprop theater. That happened very brilliantly in Montpelier many times at the State House about pipelines, not coming to Vermont through Vermont, gas pipelines coming in order to be able to go to Maine and then get shipped abroad, or go down into Massachusetts, and so. That has been also a very important subject that I have been handling. I have been working on environmental issues since 1970, 71, and I was one of the first users of public access, which was begun then in the 70s by people like Didi Halleck here in Vermont and in New York. She is a close associate of Bread and Puppet, also, and she has many films of Bread and Puppet. And in Denmark, also there were public access was begun, although that was in relation to 16 millimeter then, rather in the early 70s, we were stopping an airport from being built, which would be just in the direct line of migratory bird route on an island between Sweden and Denmark. That the businessmen, even in these countries that we tend to perhaps romanticize because we believe that their socialist systems are very intact. Well, they aren't necessarily. The businessmen always have their bottom line in mind, and it's always about money, and it's always about their making their personal money. And so we made a film about that, because milieu in Danish means in ecology and environment, and in those early days in 1970-71, this was not a word that was very well understood in the world at all. So we were attempting with our campaign to make to bring that concept, that word into the world in a mainstream way. And so then you come into conflict, as well as when you are working as an artist, activist in an anti-war situation. With the environment, it was the same thing. When you try to go to the major media to have them cover the depth of the story that you are trying to tell about the immediacy of a crisis situation, we were always finding that our views, our actions were always being distorted. We were always being turned into a joke. We were some kind of also ran or something like that, rather than the true stories in depth of what and the research that we were uncovering. And that was the reason why we were doing direct action, including in the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment. The first one was in 1972 in Stockholm. And I and my cohorts, friends, were doing guerrilla actions within the conference, because we were confronting the people who were meant to be the experts, like Barry Commoner, Margaret Mead, and others. These liberal people who might, sometimes their views might be on the border of being progressive in relation to the environment, but then they often failed because they would back off and become safe instead of pushing forward an agenda which we were then calling radical. We were considering ourselves to be radical. Radical means to me going to the root. That's actually the root of the word from the Latin. Rods, rates in Latin means root. So radical means getting to the root of the problem. So that's why worldwide at that time, worldwide, at least between the US and Europe at that time, people were beginning to make public access stations. And I am very happy to say that CCTV in Burlington keeps up the original meaning and message of the foundational principles of free speech. All of my work as an artist has been about free speech for all of these years, for 60 years almost at this point, for 55 to 65 years, it has been like that. And that is why I am aligned with Bread and Puppet, as I have been also aligned with the Living Theater, which was another great radical theater, which was also an ally of Bread and Puppet. And so that's why I've come here today, to try to be of some support for this in this telethon. We are hoping that we're going to be able to archive here not only my films, of course, but the films of all the serious filmmakers who have been making documentation of Bread and Puppet work. And so this archive is very much in need of support in that way. And I couldn't be more thrilled than to be here with my allies in this movement.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much, man. That was really inspirational, especially as someone who's aspiring to be a filmmaker and seeing how you use the art and medium of film and theater to just bring light to issues that most wouldn't consider important enough to even talk about or thinking about, enough to get ignored by legislators and all that. And the fact that we have that archived here, it just reminds us the importance of the archives. It reminds us of the importance of art in general. So I got to thank you for that, Jerome. Thank you so much. It was wonderful having you here, man.
It's like we need the arts now at this moment of incredible crisis. The arts are what's going to pull us through, the activist arts. So, yeah, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. And I'm sorry, I talk so much nonstop. You didn't even get a chance to ask me a question.
Hey, I got one good question in there. That's all I need. All right, thank you so much. All right, appreciate you, Jerome. Wonderful having you. All right, it was a pleasure. I think we got to move on to the next segment, but thank you.
And so I ended up just spending, I think half an hour with him, and we talked about this and that. And finally, I gathered up all my courage, and I said,